Now, I was going to make a dramatic compilation of all the stupid things Dave has said in comment sections, but given the fact that this is not a 24-hour live stream, I thought it would be inappropriate. Dave Farina is a YouTuber, science educator, and most importantly, a fraud. Today, I will be going over his hit piece on Christopher Langan and displaying the shocking amount of misinformation and possibly disinformation that will leave you no choice but to come up with two conclusions. Either Dave is inextricably ignorant on literally everything that he's talking about with reference to philosophy and philosophy of science, or he is consciously a liar. Now, it's pretty apparent, and Dave has blatantly said, and we have conclusive evidence that Dave has said, that Chris Langan made up his IQ scores. He says that there is no evidence, zero, of him having a high IQ, and he just made it up to drum up his theory by self-promotion. And since Dave has admittedly not read the CTMU, the only way he can criticize Chris is by not attacking his theory, but by attacking his credentials, or at least attempting to. And see, this is where the problems begin. This is built on the notion that anybody can become known as somebody with the highest IQ in the world if they just promote themselves enough. If you just say it enough times to the public, if you just claim it enough, then it's going to become true. But that is not the case, because you need third-party sources to vouch or proclaim that you do have the IQ that you claim. And the instantiation of Chris's IQ scores and his IQ claims have been made by, not Chris, by third-party sources ever since the 80s and the 90s. As a matter of fact, Chris had his IQ tested and scored live on ABC News in the early 2000s. Here, have a look.
Well, you don't often run into a farmer, or anyone for that matter, that uses his spare time to dabble in quantum physics or hardcore scientific theory. But as our Kansas City ABC affiliate's Maria Antonio reports, one Missouri farmer has interests and talents that go way beyond what most people seem capable of.
Act 2, the smart guy.
In 1999, ABC aired a story on Chris. They sent him to a neuropsychologist.
Hello, Chris.
For a standard IQ test, 2 hours of problem solving. His score reported as too high to measure.
The highest individual that I have ever measured in 25 years of doing this.
Experts tell us most people have IQs around 100. College grads average 120. Above 130 qualifies for membership in Mensa. Chris's estimated IQ has been reported at 195. According to statistics, only 1 in 100 million people have a score at that level.
Whoa, so what happened, Dave? I thought he was a fraud lying about his IQ. Like he didn't have his IQ tested by a proctored psychologist that was provided by ABC News, and his scores were reported by ABC News, and his scores, all of them, every single one, not excluding a single one of them, were recorded by third-party sources. I thought he was a fraud. I thought he was just lying. Dave, I thought he wouldn't even qualify for Mensa. Dave, I thought he was just lying about his IQ, right? So is ABC News lying? Are they conspiring to conjure up this image of some random guy, some random Christian philosopher as a 200 IQ genius? Is the news lying, Dave? The answer for any sane person is no. Like him or not, like his political views or not, Chris Langan categorically has an IQ that is way, way above the average. And it is scored and reported by third-party sources, psychologists, like the ones you just saw on ABC News, reported by ABC News. For some reason, every single one of these news sources are lying. Every single third-party source proclaiming Chris Langan to have a high IQ. Not Chris himself, by the way. He didn't start this. Every single one of them is somehow lying. And this is totally not motivated by political motivations or influence or disagreements with Chris Langan on the basis of his politics and his religious and philosophical beliefs. No, like it or not, he has a high IQ. Deal with it. You're debunked. As a matter of fact, I'm going to syllogistically debunk every retarded proposition you're going to make throughout your hit piece, and I'm going to do it on screen so you don't have any excuses to say, just watch the video. Premise 1. For one's claim of IQ to be considered correct, it must be evaluated and confirmed by third-party sources. Premise 2. Chris's IQ claims are evaluated and confirmed by third-party sources. Conclusion, therefore, Chris Langan has his IQ claims considered to be true. And one last thing that I want to mention in this section is the blatantly false and actually funny lie, just blatant lie that Dave has said about Chris Langan, that he was too stupid to go to college and was never able to go to college and never went to college, despite the fact that if you browse his Wikipedia page for more than a minute or two, you'd see that Langan was offered 2 full scholarships, one to Reed College in Oregon and the other to the University of Chicago, and he went to Reed College. And to end this section on this note, I will be leaving every single source of Chris Langan's IQ in the description for the sake of being comprehensive. If ABC News proctoring his IQ test and setting up a psychometrician to evaluate his IQ wasn't fucking enough, because I guess ABC News just lies when it comes to Chris Langan, I will put all of these sources in the description. Dave is categorically fucking stupid.
The main takeaway is that Chris insists he's a genius because, trust me, bro, is there anything we can do to independently verify that he's really so smart?
Yeah, there are third-party sources that conclusively confirm Chris's IQ scores or his intelligence. And by the way, IQ is a measure of intelligence. As a matter of fact, it is the best measure that we have, right? It is kind of weird that you want to say independently, which means you want to see academic accomplishments, because it is just a dog whistle at having academic accomplishments in order for there to be a testing of somebody's intelligence that is independent. No, we have third-party sources that are confirming his IQ. Unless you want to deny IQ as a construct, as a valid testing means of intelligence, until then, until you want to make that affirmative claim, you're fucking wrong. There are multiple third-party sources, including ABC News, unless you, again, want to say that ABC News is lying, that confirm his intelligence. And this is a straw man fallacy, wherein you propose something to be the proposition of the opposing party, and then you attack that. Chris has never claimed, I am a genius. As a matter of fact, nobody gets onto a show by just claiming, oh, I'm a genius, I have a 200 IQ, because he just pulls it out of an ass, and then they get an interview that ranges millions and millions of views. No, it's because they get their IQ tested by third-party sources, and people have great reason to believe that these people aren't all lying in a conspiracy theory, and he is actually as smart as he is claimed to be by third-party sources. So this is a straw man fallacy, and I inserted a fallacy counter because it's going to be funny how much we fucking end up with. It's hilarious.
In that Esquire article, he is compared by IQ to figures like Da Vinci and Descartes. I don't know what those guys sounded like when they went on podcasts, but they did a lot of stuff that we can point to. What has the illustrious Chris Langan done? Most people would say absolutely nothing.
Now, I already debunked this notion that in order for there to be a determination of somebody as a genius, they must have independent great work. There are so many geniuses that have been tested to have great high IQs that are geniuses that haven't published great scientific work that has been revolutionary. And there are people that have published great scientific work that are not geniuses by means that we can actually test, right? We can't test how there is a correlation or if there's a causal relation between somebody's scientific work and whether they're a genius or not. That is not something that is testable. It's not testable at all. You know what is testable? IQ. So this is a no true Scotsman fallacy. There's a combination of a false premise that most geniuses can be considered geniuses by virtue of their work. Chris Langan can be considered a genius by virtue of his work. Therefore, Chris Langan can't be a genius. This is false, because he can be a genius by other means, because he has been tested by third-party sources to have a genius IQ, which is, by the way, not... They have scientific work that is published that has affected people's lives. He must be a genius, right? That is not testable. That is not a test by which you determine if somebody's a genius. There's a test for that. It's called an IQ test, and Chris Langan has scored out of the norm on this, as I already showcased in the first section of this video. So this is a no true Scotsman fallacy. It doesn't work. It's stupid. And we're kind of going to glance over this whole section of, but you don't have science. He didn't do science, though. Yeah.
He just talks. But Chris, of course, would claim that he has done something remarkable. He has a theory of everything, and it's called CTMU, the Cognitive Theoretic Model of the Universe. Wow, that sounds neat. What's it all about?
Cognitive Theoretic Model of the Universe, the CTMU. It shows that we're all a part of the same universal self. All men are related in ways they can't necessarily discern on this plane of reality. We're all the same. We all share a basic fundamental identity with each other. which means that we should all be trying to help each other and cooperate with each other to make this a better place to live.
Wow, what an amazing revolutionary theory.
Wait, you do realize that that is not the theory. That is a simplification of a answer to a question that he was asked during an interview. I'm very curious as to whether the analysis of what is considered a theory is the same by these people. I mean, if somebody asked Einstein, what is your theory of relativity, and he tries to summarize it in one sentence, you can say, whoa, what a revolutionary thing. It's like, yeah, you actually have to read the theory. I mean, you're never going to, because you have no fucking clue what you're talking about, and you're philosophically illiterate, and you wouldn't be able to debunk a single logical proposition that is contained within the CTMU, because they have to do with metaphysics, and you're completely clueless, right? And we're going to go on to this later on when he confuses a scientific theory with a philosophical theory, as if science has a monopoly on theories, because he doesn't understand what any of these things mean. He thinks that theory is exclusively scientific, or it's an exclusively scientific term, that if you don't have an empirical means of testing a hypothesis, it can't be a philosophical theory. It is literally philosophical illiteracy and its primal presence. And that's obviously another fallacy, because it is a straw man. It is, you have this position, or I have this perceived notion of what your theory is, and I don't believe that it is revolutionary, therefore your theory can't be revolutionary. When you're not pointing to the actual thing, you're pointing to a simplification and a two-sentence comment of what a theory is. You realize that a theory can't even be articulated within 2 sentences, right? Or are you too to understand that?
He has absolutely broken all current paradigms of science with this breakthrough insight.
Funnily enough, this is another no true Scotsman fallacy. The notion that a revolutionary concept or revolutionary theory has to be scientific, it is implicit. He literally said that, right? You do realize that he literally said that. The implicit implication within this is that in order for something to be a revolutionary theory, it has to be making some level of contribution within the field of science. That is not the case. You can still have a revolutionary theory in the domain of philosophy, and it doesn't have it can have literally nothing to do with science or the scientific method, and it can perfectly be a revolutionary philosophical theory, not a scientific theory, because not all theories are scientific. You don't have a monopoly on the word theory. Theory isn't exclusive to science, right? Immanuel Kant's The Critique of Pure Reason, that was a revolutionary philosophical theory. It doesn't have anything to do with science or the scientific method, not in any capacity whatsoever, and yet it is still a revolutionary theory.
Which can be summarized as, let's all work together and get along. How did he do it? So essentially, Chris has done absolutely nothing of even remote significance in any area of human inquiry, but he's a super genius anyway because he says so. Got it.
Again, I debunked this notion that Chris Langan just said that he's a genius and everybody believes that he's a genius, and that's why he gets interviewed that ranges across millions and millions of views. It's not that ABC News covered his IQ and gave him a proctored IQ test verified by a psychologist. It's not that there are multiple third-party sources that claim that Chris has a high IQ, which, by the way, is literally the only and best measure of intelligence that we have. Not, well, what science has somebody done, right? Yeah, no, I don't think so. I think Chris Langan is a genius because he has literally been reported to be a genius by the only test that is valid enough to give us a understanding of how intelligence can be measured, which is an IQ test, and it has been confirmed by multiple third-party sources, as I mentioned in the first section, right? And this notion that Chris Langan hasn't made any contribution to any level of philosophical, or rather any level of human inquiry, is blatantly false, because it is the cognitive theoretic model of the universe, which is what you strawman as, let's all just get along together, right? No, the CTMU doesn't even have anything to do with ethics. The CTMU is a metaphysical theory. So where does let's all get along come from? That is not a characterization of his theory. If you listen to what he said, that is not a characterization of his theory. That is a byproduct of it. That is a consequence of it. You can extrapolate an ethical theory from a metaphysical theory, but that doesn't mean that the metaphysical theory is necessarily ethical. Or it has to do with ethics. So in order to actually understand what the contribution is, you have to lock in here. I'm going to say something that blows your mind. You're gonna have to fucking read the paper to actually know what you're talking about, you retard.
His theory of everything is him musing on random topics like a college freshman who got high at a party for the first time.
So this is his theory of everything. The table of contents includes the introduction on theories, models, and false dichotomies, determinacy and indeterminacy in the third option, the future of reality theory, according to John Wheeler, some additional principles, which include metaphysical principles, right, such as the reality principle, the principle of syndiphonesis, and the principle of linguistic reducibility, amongst many other philosophical and metaphysical concepts, such as syntactic closure. All of these are completely cohesive and run into a comprehensive theory of everything that is philosophical and metaphysical. So where is this notion of just talking about random shit? Is it maybe because you're referring to an interview that is conducted by Michael Knowles? You do understand that the interview is not the theory itself, right? The theory is a portion of what they're talking about in the interview, right? Just in the same way that if somebody interviews Albert Einstein and he talks about his theory briefly, that isn't equivalent to his theory, right? You understand all of this. You must, right? I thought you were a professor, bro. What is this 80 IQ response like? But I didn't read the theory, therefore the interview that I was linked must be the theory. No, it must not, you fucking idiot.
This demonstrates that the smartest man in the world does not know what a theory of everything is. He also does not know what a theory is. Let's define these two terms right now so that it will be very clear to you during the video that he has no idea what he's talking about. First up, a theory. A theory is a scientific construct that correlates large amounts of data and explains them simply and coherently. Theories must be testable, they must be falsifiable, and are typically based on quantitative data.
So Dave just pulled a definition of theory right out of his ass because he is a fraud who thinks that science has a monopoly on definitions, right? We can look into literally any dictionary and the definition of theory is not exclusive to science. Don't believe me? Here, this definition is from the Oxford Dictionary. Theory, a supposition or a system of ideas intended to explain something, especially one based on general principles independent of the thing to be explained. So where is the scientific exclusivity? Where is the exclusivity to the scientific method? Where are these definitions? Where are they coming from? Are they just pulled out of your ass because you're a fucking fraud? Here is another definition of the term theory from the Cambridge Dictionary. A formal statement of the rules on which a subject of study is based or of ideas that are suggested to explain a fact or event or more generally an opinion or explanation. For example, economic theory, scientific theory. These are examples of theory. These are not, they're not exclusive to scientific theory. So again, where's the necessity of the scientific aspect of this? Where is it in these definitions that say that the scientific component is necessary in order for something to be considered a theory? Where is it? Did you just pull it out of your ass? Hell, there is even this definition of theory on Wikipedia. A theory is a rational type of abstract thinking about a phenomenon or the results of such thinking. The process of contemplative and rational thinking is often associated with such processes as observational study or research. Theories may be scientific, belong to a non-scientific discipline, or no discipline at all. So where is the scientific exclusivity when in every single one of these definitions, science is not a necessary component? It's just an example. Did you just pull it out of your ass? And this is another definition from Botanica about what a theory is. An idea or set of ideas that is intended to explain facts or events. A widely accepted scientific theory, this is an example, Einstein's theory of relativity, theories on/about evolution, an idea that is suggested or presented as possibly true, but that is not known or proven to be true. 3, the general principles or ideas that relate to a particular subject. So where is the exclusivity? Where is the part where there it says that if it's not a scientific theory, it can't be a theory? Where is this part of testability? Where does this come from? Again, did you pull it out of your fucking ass?
If it doesn't make predictions that can be tested, it's not a theory. So, contrary to popular belief, baseless speculation and mental masturbation do not qualify as theories.
And by contrary to popular belief, he means contrary to literally every single dictionary that exists on the fucking planet. Literally every single one, except for his own definition that he pulled right out of his fucking ass that is conveniently enough conveniently enough, it's only scientific. It literally can't be anything else. And even if it was, even if his definition was true, which it's not, because literally every single high-profile dictionary disagrees with his characterization of what a theory is, because he believes that it is a monopoly of science to determine what a theory is, or what other terminology means that are actually philosophical in nature, right? Even if it was not a theory, according to his definition, that doesn't make any single one of the propositions that are contained within the CTMU false, right? Because you can make logical propositions about the fundamental nature of reality in a metaphysical capacity, and every single one of them can be proven using sentential propositional logic and even first-order logic. You can literally use logical calculus, you can use propositional calculus to determine the truth value of a proposition. Not impossible, it's very possible, but we don't have to concede this because Dave pulled the definition right out of his fucking ass. Doesn't exist anywhere. This definition does literally not exist anywhere. It is his propaganda because he's a fraud. Now, given the fact that his characterization of a theory is made up and he literally pulled it right out of his ass and doesn't have anything to do with the reality of the definition of the term theory, we can just throw anything that he has to say about a theory of everything right out the window.
Then, a theory of everything also has a very specific meaning. It does not mean, whoa, think about it, bro, this totally explains everything in the universe, bro. It is a term that stems from theoretical physics and the attempt to find a quantum field theory that applies to all the fundamental forces. In the early
No, a theory of everything is by definition a theory of that which encapsulates everything. It is necessarily that of which has an explanatory power, which encompasses all things, including a theory of physics, including a unified field theory. A theory of everything must have the capacity to explain that on a logical capacity. This is why epistemology is important. This is why ontology is necessary in order for you to have a theory of everything, in order for you to have a Weltanschauung, right? In order for you to have a theory of everything, you must have logic. You must have metaphysics, ontology, logic, epistemology, and you must also have, by extension, a theory of ethics and a theory of morality in order for it to encapsulate the entire fundamental nature of reality, right? And none of this is exclusive to science, because science doesn't have anything to do with metaphysics, science doesn't have anything to do with ontology, science doesn't have anything to do with any of these things, and yet all of these components are necessary in order for a theory of everything, meaning an explanation of everything, to be an explanation of everything. And for the sake of comprehensiveness, and by comprehensiveness I mean being comprehensive of everything that actually matters, of propositions that he's actually making, and not just personal attacks and slights. We already saw a lot of those early in the video with his numerous comments, because he is fucking terminally online, right? I'm just going to be containing his propositions that he makes about the CTMU or Chris Langen's IQ, because that's literally the only thing that he has. He has two bullets in his ammunition, and they're both retard bullets.
Okay, let's get into this ridiculous interview.
Kerosene lamp in a sheep wagon out in the middle of a field.
Reading Bertrand Russell and Albert Einstein.
Reading Bertrand Russell and Albert Einstein, and it occurred to me, these two things really need to be put together.
What an image! Reading a book on a wagon? Mike is tickled pink about it. Anyway, putting Einstein and Russell together. What does that mean? What about Bertrand Russell? And how do you shove that into physics equations? Want to get a little more concrete?
Yeah, so Bertrand Russell was a mathematician and a philosopher, and Albert Einstein was a physicist. So what he's alluding to is that there needs to be a unification of the material world and an explanation of the material world with logic and philosophy. It's very simple if you're not like sub 85 IQ.
And then, once I decided that, I started putting them together. And then I found out about Kurt Gödel and the undecidability theorem. And yes, absolutely.
Okay, so no explanation on that combo. And then Gödel too? Are you sure you aren't just listing smart people from history and pretending to be as smart as them?
Okay, you see, because reality isn't just geometric, which is what Einstein thought it was, nor is it just linguistic. It's a blend of the two, right? Russell saw it as being linguistic. Einstein saw it as being geometric.
So Russell pretended geometry didn't exist and Einstein pretended language didn't exist? What are you saying? Studying linguistics doesn't mean you think nothing exists apart from linguistics. Start making sense.
It's actually very hilarious where he like does a retarded representation of what the other person is saying. It's like, this representation is stupid. It's like, yeah, because it's yours. It's called the straw man fallacy again. Notice that he didn't say this. He meant that Einstein saw the fundamental nature of reality as geometric, which he literally did, and Bertrand Russell thought of it as being more linguistic, and Chris Langan saw that there's a duality between these two things that can be unified under a dual aspect monism, which if you read the theory, which you obviously haven't because you're philosophically illiterate, he talks about there is a dual aspect monism under which these two things can be represented and they can be logically coherently theorized together, right? So I don't know, you having trouble there, Bucky?
Okay, so I decided that reality must be logico-geometric, putting the two of them together. And of course, then I realized, well, I've got to put together a theory, construct a theory in which reality is actually logico-geometric. And so that's where the CTMU came from.
And the CTMU is the cognitive theoretic model of the universe.
Cognitive theoretic model of the universe.
This is your theory of everything.
My theory of everything, and it's all in the name.
And there's the big reveal. Einstein plus Russell equals Langan, who is clearly smarter than both of them put together. So let's dig into this theory, shall we?
If you take a good close look at that, you've got cognitive theory, and of course, you know, a theory is a kind of language, theoretic language, okay? And then you've got cognitive theoretic model, you've got a model, and then you've got universe. You've got a language, you've got a universe, and then the model is the mapping between them. CTMU says those are all the same thing. All of those terms, all of those properties are distributed everywhere over reality. Reality can have only one structure once you realize that and you implement it in theoretical form.
Yeah, it's going to be this brand of word salad for the rest of the interview, folks. No, Chris, theories are not languages. They are models. Saying theories are languages and then listing models separately as though theories aren't models only demonstrates that you don't know what any of those words mean.
So it is by definition a language. A language is... So it by definition is a language. A language is composite of syntax and semantics, and its effect is to communicate a set of content. So a theory by definition, it has an instantiation of a certain set of rules, which is what a language is. That is the necessary components of a language. So a theory has all those components. It can be characterized as a language, right? It can simultaneously be a model. A model is also a language, insofar as it complies with the definition of a language, which is syntax and semantics. I don't know why there is this exclusivity or this exclusion of theories from a language. Yeah, theory is a language. Mathematical theories are languages. Of course they are. How can they not be? How can they not have a syntax? How can they not have a semantics? How can they not be linguistically expressed? Because so long as they are, so long as they have an alphabet, so long as they have instantiations, so long as they have a syntax and semantics and a format of communication of a certain set of contents, they by definition are a language. You have no fucking clue what you're talking about. You're completely clueless. And as we have here on the screen, obviously, you can see that a language is a structured system of communication that consists of grammar and vocabulary. And it also consists of syntax and semantics and an instantiation of an alphabet for the purposes of communication of a certain set of content, right? So insofar as a theory is an attempt at an explanation of some content, and it must abide by a certain set of rules in order for the explanation to be coherent and logically intelligible, it must subscribe to a certain syntax and a certain semantics, composite of a grammar being the association of these different instantiations and how they can express to create meaningful terms and meaningful either theorems or meaningful propositions, right? Literally is a language. Literally it's a language, and it also can be a model. These are not mutually exclusive terms. You understand that, right? And of course you don't, because you're philosophically illiterate.
To build a reality out of that.
Which mathematical structure, Chris? You keep pretending that you can do math, but you haven't shown anyone an ounce of math.
Yeah, because you're not looking for it. You're watching an interview. What do you think? He's going to bust out equations? He's going to bust out the mathematical logical equations and the formulas and the propositions and prop logic and first order logic of the CTMU in an interview? Are you mentally disabled? Yeah, if you want to look for the mathematical propositions and the mathematical formalizations of his theory, you can go to the theory, right? Which he hasn't conveniently, while espousing that Chris has no idea what he's talking about. He can't demonstrate anything. You're watching an interview. Go read the theory, and if you can, debunk a single proposition that is contained within it. All of this has been mathematically formalized. All of this has been logically formalized. It has been formalized in literally every single one of the papers that Chris has written, except, hang on, what did Dave say? That he doesn't care. You don't care about the mathematical proof. You don't care about the mathematical justification for these things, because you literally, there are people that are telling you to go to the papers to find out what you're asking for or find out what you're looking for, and you're saying no, it's just bullshit. So yeah, this is called an argument from ignorance. Just because I don't perceive something to be in a particular way, just because I don't perceive the evidence, just because I don't see the evidence or I'm not looking for the evidence, then Chris can't have a model of reality that is mathematically justifiable and all of his propositions be formalized in a mathematical capacity. He just can't, because I'm not looking for it. So if I'm not looking for it and I don't see it, then how can it be the case? It is stupid.
So you come up with that identity, and then you search it for its properties. You see, once you've built the preliminary framework, then you start deducing the properties of this identity, and you find out that those properties match those of God as described in most of the world's major religions.
What preliminary framework? Describe it. Which properties? List them. Actually say something. And
notice how he's literally talking to a still frame. He's literally talking to a still frame and saying, do it. Come on, do it. Give it to me. How about you engage in a debate, pussy? Oh, hang on. I forgot. You're terrified of a debate. You're terrified of a debate. You wouldn't want to debate any of these propositions. So it's just curious to me why you would try to understand a theory, but talk against a still frame that in an interview. Why don't you just read the theory? You know, if you want to understand the theory, if you want to see the justifications for it, why wouldn't you just read the theory, you fucking retard? So the rest of the video is him spurging out about aliens, despite the fact that Chris Lange doesn't make an affirmative proposition of the existence of aliens, or the affirmative proposition of the existence of aliens contained within UFOs, right? And he's just spurging out about politics, that's all it is. Insofar as my video is concerned, I'm concerned with the philosophical validity of the CTMU itself, and he hasn't argued against any part of it, because he's just spurging out. He's just having an autism attack because this is motivated by his leftist ideology, because that is what he is. He's just spurging out because Chris Lange is verified to have an IQ that is way above the norm, and he has a theory of everything which is comprehensive, closed, and consistent, and it descriptively analyzes and gets us to understand the fundamental nature of reality in a metaphysical capacity, which is much more fundamental than a physics, than a unified field theory could literally ever be, ever. And so he's never going to argue about any of this. He's never going to have a debate because he's fucking terrified of it. He's terrified of debate. He's terrified of clashing ideas in a philosophical extent. If not, Dave, debate me. Debate me. Debate anybody in this sphere on anything that has to do with the CTMU. All you can do is watch an interview and say, well, why isn't the entire theory in the interview? How about you go read the paper? And as a matter of fact, I invite you to make another video. I invite you to respond to this video and just name a single principle with the CTMU. Just open the document and try to get something out that isn't completely retarded. That doesn't sound like you got your brain cells raped out of your skull.
How can someone get through to these people? To any of them, I would say, can you acknowledge that you only think he's intelligent because you don't understand what he's saying? Do you know who else says things you don't understand?
And also this notion that people believe that Chris Lange is smart because they don't understand what he's saying, then why isn't literally every other Redditor or a fucking Discord debater not on these interviews? Perhaps it's because Chris Lange has his IQ verified by third-party sources, including ABC News, as that of a genius. Maybe it's that. Maybe, just maybe is that even a possibility? that the reason that Chris Langan is receiving all this attention from people is because he is confirmed to have a high IQ, and you fucking don't, because you're an idiot.
Have absolutely nothing to offer society beyond smoke and mirrors.
You can apply this to literally any philosopher. I assume Dave believes that Immanuel Kant is of complete worthlessness to the entirety of human civilization. If he isn't, according to Dave's characterization, then there's brought about a contradiction, because the CTMU is of greater value philosophically than Immanuel Kant's critique of pure reason, because it literally debunks it in the first couple of pages. It debunked the critique of pure reason in the first couple of pages. Now, he wouldn't know that because Dave has no clue what he is talking about. He is a clueless idiot. He doesn't have any capacity for understanding philosophy because he's philosophically illiterate. He doesn't know how to debate anything that isn't flat earth or evolution, because the domain of his knowledge is within evolution. Me debate flat earthers, because he can't debate any of his positions. He can't debate his politics. He can't debate his political beliefs. He can't debate his philosophical positions. He is clueless. So, insofar as you're talking about a contribution, Chris Langan's contribution to philosophy is no less important than literally any other philosophers. As a matter of fact, it is more significant because it is completely comprehensive, closed, and logically justified. It is more so an improvisation on the works of Hegel. Are we going to say that these philosophers have contributed nothing to anything because they're not scientific? Right? You realize this is the stupid criticism that you gave of the CTMU earlier, that the CTMU is not scientific. It's not a scientific theory, therefore it can't be a theory. Do you think Hegel didn't have philosophical theories? Right? You're an idiot.
Don't try and steer the media landscape towards highlighting actual educated and knowledgeable people. We are absolutely doomed as a species. Because when the shit really hits the fan and we are faced with a real existential problem, it's not going to be some jerk like Chris Langan who gets us out of it. I can promise you that. So that's it for Chris Langan, another in a long line of pseudo-intellectual clones we absolutely don't need and who hopefully will fade into obscurity very quickly. But the factory is cranking these guys out faster than sweatshops can make new iPhones, so I'll see you next time for whichever fraud I have to cover next.
So I've brought you to the end of this video, and 15 fallacies later, and that's just the stuff that I actually covered that was relevant to the CTMU. I didn't even go to the retarded propositions that he made about politics. And if you recall, at the beginning of the video, I presented you with a dichotomy that either Dave is completely clueless and ignorant of any philosophy or metaphysics or the CTMU or any of the things that he's claiming about Chris Langan, all of which are slander, or he's a liar. Now, I presented this as a disjunction, but I think I've presented the case well enough that he is both and much more. I have proved every significant proposition that Dave has made about Chris or his theory wrong, like his misapprehension and complete lack of understanding of what a theory is and his characterization of it, and the same thing with the theory of everything, the same thing about his misunderstanding of models, theories, and languages, because of his lack of understanding of every single one of those things, his bullshit slanderous claims about Chris Langan just making it up, making his IQ scores up, and that he has absolutely no substantiation for his IQ claims, right? I presented a video from ABC News verifying his IQ scores, unless you're engaging in a conspiracy theory to promote Chris Langan for some reason, right? And we also touched on his complete lack of understanding of the CTMU because of, well, if I didn't read it and I'm watching this interview, then this interview must be equivalent to the theory. All in all, Dave is a fraud. He engages in science propaganda, and this is not the same thing as science education. It is muddying the waters. It is using this notion of scientific monopoly to claim that certain terms must be scientific in order for them to be intelligible or true, which is not the case. A theory has literally never ever been exclusive to a scientific capacity, and I demonstrated that with 5 of the major dictionary sources, which completely proved him wrong. In conjunction with that, this notion that theories or true propositions can only be can only be scientific. They can only be represented within the confines of science, which is, again, science propaganda bullshit. It is scientism. It is nothing more than that. He cannot engage in debate. Dave, debate me or Chris or anybody in this community because you get fucking ragdolled. You speak slow. You talk like a retard. You don't have any understanding of any of these philosophical ideas. And you're all in all just a fraud.